event.
Perfect. So thank you for taking time to chat with me today and with the Kyiv Post, on whose behalf we're doing this quick interview with you. So first, I guess we'll start with what's going on now. How do you think the situation in Ukraine has changed? And how do you think Putin's calculation of the situation in Ukraine has changed since the start of the war?
Look, I'm not a military expert, so I don't think I have the same authority to talk about war games as about chess games. But judging from what I could hear, analyze, so it looks clearly that Ukraine is doing much better now. It's too early to call this it's done. I think we still have many more months ahead of us of exhausting fights, because Russia still has plenty of resources to throw into the flames of the war. But the latest news, especially from the north, are very encouraging. And I think that there's something else now is just becoming a factor, which probably is underestimated by many in the West. It's a psychological factor. I think the morale is these days always probably as important as military equipment, and naturally the morale of Russian soldiers keeps deteriorating. And it seems to me, though again I cannot judge from afar, that Ukrainians they got to the point where they're willing to bear any cost to liberate their country and to defeat the enemy. And also the continuation of the war will have dramatic effect inside Russia. You have body bags still arriving, not to the big cities, to the countryside, poor countryside, but the numbers keep growing. So we don't know exact number, but the latest paper that was released by or actually leaked from the Ministry of Defense in Russia, it estimates the number of dead close to 50,000, and that's a big number to deal with, even in Putin's Russia. And also those who come back, wounded or just somehow this is demobilized, they will create chaos. We in America we experience this syndrome, post-war syndrome, but these guys will come back, just to a very different environment. It's where they will be subject to probably some power abuse, and they could respond. So again, situation in Russia, for me, from my perspective, is just it's going to deteriorate, will be deteriorating. And we have a combination of factors. It's a war in Ukraine that is not going Putin's way, and sanctions. Sanctions keep still. It's not decisive effect on Russian economy, but they keep biting. And I think people feel more and more the heat of the war. And when these two trends meet, the negative results from the war front lines and increased pressure of sanctions, then we'll see whether Putin can hold his grip on power.
Do you think now Putin as a person, not as a military strategy, but as a person who you know what he thinks, how the power structure in Russia thinks? I'll ask a joint question is about nuclear things. What is the idea with the Zaporizhia? I mean, what are they doing with this nuclear power plant? What's the strategy? Is it just to cause fear? And also, do you think that Putin is the type that would use something like nuclear weapons in Ukraine if he feels that he's losing?
Look, I think that all discussions about nukes, I think is very hypothetical. And also, I think that the Putin never dealt, with the situations like this one, with this kind of crisis. He was always very lucky that he could escape because his opponents never pressed hard. They always, kept folding cards instead of calling his bluff. I think now we're at the point in history where even the very mediocre leadership of the free world realized that we had no other choice but to call Putin's bluff. Mm-hmm. And I think he also feels that it's not going to work as it did before. So that's why we're not hearing these days the same bold threats. Just it's very like a brazen threats from Putin's generals and from Putin's entourage. Yeah, we will do this. We will just use whatever weapons we have. Yeah, it seems they are just, they are trying to sort of find kind of a middle ground. So there's not to drop threats altogether, but not to provoke NATO, because they understand them. If they gone too far and NATO is dragged in, that's disastrous. I think many Russian generals now, they realize the war is lost, because if all the objectives, strategic objectives that Putin declared or hasn't declared but had in mind, they all just, it's all of them failed. So yeah, and continuing the war is the only way for Putin to stay in power and to create, like, it's extra chaos in the free world, hoping that maybe winter could offer him new opportunities. I think it's a desperate attempt to protract the agony. And I would be very cynical and even laughing at it, but it's still killing people. That's why we should understand that Putin's desperate attempts to stay afloat will put thousands and thousands of people, both on the front line and innocent civilians, into graves in the months to come, before Ukraine can eventually liberate her country.
You just had your forum for Free Russia a few days ago.
Congress.
Sorry, Congress. Yes, now it's Congress. And so, how was that? And how do you see the opposition today? And what do you see coming ahead?
Look, it was a big success. We had more than 500 participants, which was the biggest event we ever organized in Vilnius, and we had a very impressive list of the foreign participants, the foreign guests, high-level executives and MPs, and it's it just demonstrated that Russian Action Committee, the group that I founded together with Michael Khodorkovsky, is now seen as the main voice for Russian opposition in exile. Yeah, I run an important panel, the war in Ukraine, the last war of Russian Empire, ? And it included what I call the five countries, coalition of willing, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Great Britain. So, and it's, again, impressive list. President Ilves from Estonia, Minister Pabriks from Latvia, Deputy Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Adamanas of Lithuania, and Jablonski of Poland, and Tom Tagenhat, who at the time was of the conference, was still MP, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the British Parliament, and now just a couple of days ago, he was appointed a Minister of Security in Liz Truss government. So this gives an idea that this how the Congress was viewed by people from the countries that are doing their utmost to help Ukraine. We had a great panel on sanctions that included such experts as Michael McFaul and Bill Browder, and I think, again, as we stated our position very clearly. So we we believe that the free world must do absolutely everything to help Ukraine win. There's no other solution. There's no other outcome of this war. Only Ukrainian unconditional victory and Putin's unconditional defeat. And the only chance to liberate Russia from Putin's fascism is to raise the Ukrainian flag in Sevastopol. So that's what we believe is a top priority for anyone who wants to see our planet safe from Putin's existential threat of destruction. And we also believe that Europe should demonstrate its resolve by banning Russian tourism altogether. We support a full ban on tourist visas, and at the same time, we argue that those Russians who would like to leave Putin's what we call North Korea and to become, just citizens of or members of virtual South Korea, they should be given this opportunity, providing they sign a simple declaration stating that the war is criminal, Putin's regime is illegitimate, and Ukraine is a whole. This is full recognition of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. So that's the combined approach that we advocate. and we hope that it will, it will have an understanding of friendly governments, and we're already talking to number of these governments to find the best way to work on behalf of these tens, most like 100,000 Russians that would like to become the members of our virtual state. Again, cutting all the ties with Putin's Russia. We don't believe that the tourism should be accepted at the time of the war. You cannot go back and forth from the front line.
Sure, that makes sense to me. So listen, I got 3 questions from people that sent questions in for this interview. And so I'll start with this: what do you make of the National Republican Army? What is it, and what's your feelings about that?
It's a fake.
It's fake. Very good.
Absolute fake.
And who's behind it, or what is behind it?
I don't know, but I'm not an expert on fakes. So we have been wasting so much time on fake news in America. It's Ilya Ponomarev. Was just used this opportunity to advertise his own agenda, but I think it's all falling apart because people realize that it's just it has no substance. Unfortunately, this has many fakes. It led to dramatic consequences for some people inside Russia who have been arrested now in connection to that. So at a wartime, doing these fakes, could have lethal effect for people who otherwise could be saved.
Yeah, makes sense. So let me ask you another question. Next, totally unrelated question. In the world of chess, Magnus Carlsen pulling out of the Sinquefield Cup, what do you make of all this?
I don't know all the details about surrounding this conflict in St. Louis because he did it after his game with Hans Niemann, coming just short of accusing his opponent of cheating. But while I don't want to speculate, since again I don't know all the details, I think that decision is unacceptable. I think that the world champion has responsibility for the game, and showing this disrespect to players and to the organizers, which is St. Louis is the most prestigious tournament in the world. It's absolutely wrong, and the least he has to do is to provide an explanation. You can't just walk away, and so far he's silent, and that bothers me a lot.
That's interesting. The one other question we had from someone was, do you think that Putin is a threat to your own self, your own security, is the question they asked.
Yeah, probably. I just, I
hope not.
Thinking about it, doesn't help.
Very good answer. Well, and so let me ask one last thing. So typically we end with, is there anything, if you could voice or say one thing to the people of Ukraine, because this will be translated to Ukrainian as well, what would you like to say to the Ukrainian people?
Look, I think the heroism is just, is so refreshing at the time of the cynicism. And again, I wish them strength. And I believe that we all owe them big. I'm not sure we can ever compensate them for the sacrifices they made, not only for their own country, but for the freedom around the world. And as a Russian citizen, though, with the probably, longest record of fighting Putin, I still feel that I'm responsible for the sufferings now that they're experiencing caused by Putin's criminal regime. And again, we will never be able to repay them for their sacrifices and heroism and the spirit. And again, it's the country that is now spiritual leader of the free world, and it reminded all of us that we had ideas and values worth fighting for and even dying for.
Fantastic. Thank you, Garry. That's perfect. So I appreciate your time, and I guess we'll be in touch.